My name is Emily Carter. I'm 28 years old, and until last year, I believed my parents would never hurt me. I was wrong. I grew up in a small town in Ohio with my parents, Linda and Robert Carter. We were not rich. Actually, we struggled most of the time. My father worked construction jobs, and my mother worked at a beauty salon near our neighborhood grocery store. When I was a little girl, I remember hearing my parents argue about money almost every night. "Bills again?" my father would say angrily. "We can barely survive," my mother cried once. Those memories stayed inside me for years. That was why I promised myself something very important when I was 16 years old. I would never live like that. I started working early. After school, I worked at a grocery store. During college, I cleaned hotel rooms on weekends. Sometimes I slept only 4 hours before classes. My friends enjoyed parties and vacations. I saved every dollar. No expensive clothes, no fancy restaurants, no luxury life, just work. I moved to Chicago after graduation and found a stable office job at a marketing company. The pay was not amazing, but I kept saving money every month. Slowly, my bank account grew. 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. Finally, after almost 10 years of sacrifice, my savings reached $100,000. 100,000. I still remember sitting alone in my apartment kitchen, staring at my banking app with tears in my eyes. That money meant freedom to me. It meant safety. It meant I could finally buy my own house before turning 30. For the first time in my life, I felt proud of myself. Then everything changed with one phone call. It was a Tuesday evening when my mother called me. "Emily," she said excitedly, "your father and I are planning something very special." I smiled while making instant noodles for dinner. "What is it?" "Our 30th wedding anniversary," she almost screamed happily. "We booked a luxury resort in Miami." "That sounds nice," I said softly. Honestly, I felt happy for them at first. My parents never traveled anywhere expensive before. But then my mother said something strange. "We already paid for everything." I stopped stirring my noodles. "Okay." "We used the savings account." I frowned. "What savings account?" There was a short silence. Then she laughed nervously. "The family account connected to your old student banking account." Suddenly, my stomach dropped. Years ago, when I turned 18, my parents helped me open my first bank account. Later, I created my own savings account for my house fund. I thought everything was separated. I was wrong. My hands started shaking. Slowly, I opened my banking app. Then I saw it. Balance, $327.14. I could not breathe. The spoon fell from my hand onto the kitchen floor. "No," I whispered. My mother kept talking happily, like nothing was wrong. "The hotel is beautiful, Emily. Ocean view, spa, private dinner, everything. Your father deserves this after working hard his whole life." I felt dizzy. "You took my money?" Finally, the room became silent. Then my father's voice appeared in the background. "Don't act dramatic." My chest hurt so badly I could barely speak. "That was my savings." My mother sighed loudly. "Oh, sweetheart, it's just money. We're your parents." Just money. 10 years of my life. 10 years of sacrifice. 10 years of skipped vacations, extra shifts, and lonely nights. Gone. I sat slowly on the kitchen floor while tears filled my eyes. That money was for my future, I whispered. My father grabbed the phone from my mother. You owe us anyway, he said coldly. We raised you. We paid for your food, your clothes, your school supplies. Family helps family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You stole from me. No, he snapped angrily. Family shares. At that moment, something inside me broke. Not just my trust, not just my dream, something deeper. Because the two people who taught me honesty had just destroyed my future without even asking me first. And the worst part? They truly believed they did nothing wrong. For the next 3 days, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the number on my banking app. $327.14. That number haunted me. At work, I could not focus. I made mistakes during meetings. I forgot emails. Even my boss noticed something was wrong. Emily, are you okay? He asked one morning. I forced a small smile. Just tired. But the truth was much worse. I felt empty. Every dream I built for 10 years disappeared in one phone call. The worst part was my parents acted like I was selfish for being upset. 2 days later, my younger brother Jason called me. Hey, he said quietly. I leaned against my apartment window. So you know already? Yeah. And? Jason sighed heavily. Emily, they're saying you're overreacting. I laughed bitterly. Of course they are. They think family should share everything. Did they ask me before taking $100,000? He stayed silent. That silence gave me my answer. Later that night, my phone exploded with family messages. My Aunt Carol texted first. Your mother is crying non-stop. Then my cousin Rachel sent, You only get one family. Another message came from my uncle. Money comes back, parents don't. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Nobody cared about what happened to me. Nobody asked how hard I worked for that money. Nobody cared that my future was destroyed overnight. To them, I was simply the ungrateful daughter hurting her poor parents. 3 days later, I came home from work exhausted. And froze. My parents were sitting outside my apartment building. My mother smiled brightly when she saw me. Emily! I didn't smile back. What are you doing here? My father stood slowly. We drove 6 hours to see you. I crossed my arms tightly. I don't want to talk. My mother's eyes immediately filled with tears. There you go again being cold. Cold? I unlocked my apartment door silently, hoping they would leave. Instead, they followed me inside like nothing had happened. My father looked around my small apartment. You still live like this even after saving all that money? I stared at him in shock. You mean the money you stole? My mother suddenly gasped dramatically. Emily, stop saying that horrible word. Because it's true. The room became tense immediately. My father sat on my couch and rubbed his forehead impatiently. Listen carefully, he said. Your mother and I sacrificed our entire lives for you children. I stayed silent. We never traveled, never enjoyed expensive things, never bought luxury items. Everything we did was for this family. I felt anger rising inside my chest. So that gives you permission to empty my account? My mother started crying again. You're breaking my heart. I almost laughed. My heart had already been broken. You know what hurts? I whispered. Working for 10 years while trusting the people who betrayed me. My father's face hardened. You're acting selfish. That word hit me hard. Selfish. I worked extra shifts while my friends enjoyed life. I skipped vacations, skipped dating, skipped happiness sometimes. Everything because I wanted security for my future. But somehow I was selfish? I looked directly at my parents. That money was for my house. My mother wiped her tears dramatically. You can save again? I felt something inside me snap. Save again? Like those 10 years meant nothing? Like my exhaustion meant nothing? Like my sacrifices were replaceable? I opened the apartment door slowly. Leave! Both of them stared at me. What? My mother whispered. I said leave. My father stood up angrily. You would throw your own parents out over money? I shook my head slowly. This isn't about money anymore. The room became completely silent. It's about trust, I said quietly. For 1 second, I thought maybe they finally understood. Maybe they finally realized how deeply they hurt me. But then my father pointed at me angrily. If you really loved us, this wouldn't matter. Those words destroyed me completely. Because I did love them. That was exactly why this pain felt unbearable. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I held the door open. Please leave. My mother cried louder, while my father grabbed the car keys angrily. Before walking out, he looked directly at me. One day you'll regret treating us like this. Then they left. The apartment became silent again. I slowly sat on the floor after the door closed, and for the first time in my life, I realized something painful. Some parents don't see their children as people. They see them as extensions of themselves, as something they own. That night, I cried until sunrise, not only because I lost my money, but because I lost the image of the parents I thought I had. A week after my parents visited my apartment, I stopped answering most phone calls. I only went to work and came home. That was my life. I deleted social media because seeing my parents' anniversary photos made me physically sick. Luxury dinners, beach sunsets, champagne glasses, smiling faces. Meanwhile, I was calculating grocery prices because my savings were gone. One night, my boss Daniel asked me to stay after work. You don't look okay, he said gently. I tried to smile. I'm fine. But suddenly, tears filled my eyes again. I was tired of pretending. So I told him everything, every detail, the missing money, the family pressure, the guilt, the betrayal. Daniel listened quietly without interrupting. When I finished, he looked shocked. Emily! That's not normal! 3 simple words, but hearing them changed something inside me. Because for weeks, everyone treated me like I was crazy for being hurt. Finally, someone understood. Daniel gave me the business card of a lawyer friend. "You should at least know your options," he said carefully. That business card stayed in my purse for 3 days before I finally used it. The lawyer's name was Rachel Evans. She listened carefully while reading my bank documents. Finally, she sighed softly. "Your parents technically had access to the account because of the old joint connection." My stomach dropped. "So there's nothing I can do?" "Not exactly," she replied. "This situation is complicated. Legally, they accessed the account, but morally, the money clearly belonged to you." I looked down quietly. Rachel folded her hands together. "You can still file a civil lawsuit if you want." The word lawsuit sounded terrifying. I never imagined fighting my own parents in court. Rachel noticed my fear immediately. "You don't have to decide today," she said gently, "but I recommend sending a formal demand letter first." "A demand letter?" "It's basically a warning asking them to return the money before legal action." I nodded slowly. Part of me still hoped my parents would apologize. Maybe this would finally make them understand how serious everything was. 3 days later, the letter arrived at my parents' house. And chaos exploded immediately. My phone rang nonstop. My Aunt Carol screamed the moment I answered. "How could you threaten your own parents with lawyers?" I closed my eyes tiredly. How could they steal from their daughter? "You're humiliating this family." I almost laughed. Interesting. Nobody cared when I was humiliated, only when my parents faced consequences. Later that night, my brother Jason called again. His voice sounded nervous. "Emily, there's something you don't know." I sat up slowly. "What do you mean?" Long silence. Then he whispered, "Dad has gambling debt." Everything inside me froze. "What?" Jason sighed heavily. "He started sports betting last year. At first he won money, then he lost everything." I felt sick immediately. "How much?" "A lot." Suddenly, everything made sense. The expensive anniversary trip, the panic, the missing money. This was never about celebrating love. It was about escaping reality. Jason continued quietly. "Mom knew about the debt. They were both scared." I leaned against the wall, trying to breathe normally. "They used my money to pay his debts." "Partly," Jason admitted softly. "And the vacation, too." I could not believe it. My father destroyed my future because he could not control his gambling, and my mother helped him hide it. That night, my mother finally called me herself. For the first time in weeks, her voice sounded weak instead of dramatic. "You talked to Jason," she whispered. "Yes." Long silence filled the phone. Then she started crying softly. "We didn't know what to do." "You could have told me the truth." "Your father was ashamed." I laughed bitterly. "So stealing from me was easier?" "Emily, please understand." "No, Mom, you understand." My voice shook badly. "I trusted you more than anyone in this world." She kept crying quietly. "We were desperate." For 1 second, I almost felt sorry for her. Then she said something that destroyed that feeling completely. "You're young. You can save the money again." I closed my eyes painfully. There it was again, as if 10 years of sacrifice meant nothing, as if my pain was temporary and unimportant, as if my future could simply restart like a video game. "You still don't understand," I whispered. "Emily, you didn't just take money from me." Tears rolled down my face silently. "You took my safety, my trust, my future." The line became silent. Then, very softly, my mother asked, "What happened to our little girl?" I almost broke completely after hearing that question, because the truth was simple. Their little girl grew up the moment her parents betrayed her. After learning the truth about my father's gambling debt, something inside me changed forever. The anger was still there, the pain too, but now there was sadness underneath everything, because I finally understood something terrible. My parents were not strong people. They were broken people pretending to be strong. For the next few months, I kept my distance from them. I focused only on surviving. I moved into a smaller apartment to save money on rent. I stopped ordering takeout food. I worked overtime almost every weekend. Slowly, painfully, I started rebuilding my savings again. But emotionally, I felt exhausted. Every family holiday became uncomfortable. Some relatives stopped talking to me completely after hearing about the lawyer letter. Others secretly agreed with me, but were too afraid to say it publicly. Meanwhile, my parents struggled financially more and more. My father's debt was worse than anyone realized. Credit cards, personal loans, missed payments. The perfect anniversary trip they proudly showed online had actually destroyed the rest of their lives. Then, one cold November morning, my phone rang at 5:30 a.m. It was Jason. His voice sounded panicked. "Emily, Dad had a heart attack." Everything inside me froze instantly. I grabbed my coat and drove to the hospital through heavy rain with shaking hands. When I arrived, my mother looked completely different. Older, smaller, fragile. Her eyes were swollen from crying. The moment she saw me, she broke down completely. Without thinking, I hugged her tightly. Because no matter how much pain existed between us, she was still my mother. The doctor later explained that years of stress, unhealthy habits, and financial pressure badly damaged my father's heart. "He's stable for now," the doctor said carefully, "but he needs major lifestyle changes." That night, I sat alone beside my father's hospital bed. The room was dark, except for the soft light from the machines beside him. For the first time in my life, my father looked weak. Not scary, not angry, just tired. He slowly opened his eyes when he noticed me sitting there. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then finally, very quietly, he whispered, "I failed you." My throat tightened immediately. I looked down at my hands, trying not to cry. "I wanted you to have a better life than me," he continued weakly. Tears filled my eyes. "Then why did you destroy mine?" I whispered. My father stared silently at the ceiling for several seconds. Then he finally answered honestly, "Because I was scared." That sentence hit me harder than I expected. Not because it excused what he did, but because it was the first real truth he had told me in months. I kept thinking I could fix everything before you found out, he admitted. I thought one big win would solve everything. But gambling never works that way. One bad decision becomes another, then another, until lies become your entire life. My father slowly turned his head toward me. I'm sorry, Emily. Not defensive, not angry, not manipulative, just sorry. And somehow, that made me cry even harder. Because all I wanted this entire time was honesty, not excuses, not guilt, not emotional manipulation, just the truth. A month later, my parents sold their house to pay off part of the debt. They also returned some of my money, not all $100,000, but enough to help me start over again. Things between us never fully healed after that. Some wounds don't disappear completely, but slowly, over time, we learned how to speak honestly again. Carefully, like strangers trying to rebuild trust, one small piece at a time. Today, I'm 30 years old. I still work hard, still save money, still dream about owning my own home someday. And yes, sometimes I still feel angry when I remember everything. But I also learned something important from all this pain. Parents are human beings too, flawed, weak, sometimes selfish, sometimes broken, and loving your family does not mean accepting betrayal. Real love needs honesty. Real love needs respect. Forgiveness does not mean pretending nothing happened. Sometimes forgiveness simply means choosing peace instead of hate, even after your heart was shattered. And maybe the saddest part of growing up is realizing the people who raised you are just ordinary humans trying, and often failing, to survive life themselves. But despite everything they took from me, I promised myself one thing. Nobody would ever take my future away again.